So this is pro storyboard techniques. It's not going to be nearly as cool as it sounds because this is really just a collection of all the little dumb things that I've learned about storyboards over the years, and I'm hoping to put them together, and hopefully there's some stuff that makes your life easier to use storyboards. How many people here use storyboards? Cool. How many people here like their UI and code? A couple people? Cool. How many people think storyboards, I'm never going to use them ever? Nobody. All right. Cool. Right on. Okay, so introductions. I'm Joe Keeley. That is me drinking poop coffee. Does anybody know about this? Yeah, all right. So in Indonesia, they have this little thing that's like a ferret. It's called a luwak. And it eats coffee beans and poops them out. And so they make coffee out of those because they're the best beans, apparently. They're not actually digested. They're just the ones that the ferret picked. It's pretty tasty coffee, but not with the money. Anyways, my kids like to insist that I show this picture of me drinking coffee because they think it's funny. All right, so who am I? Why do I know anything about storyboards? I work for MartianCraft. I'm one of the lead Cocoa developers there. And then I worked on this book with Kyle Richter. You in the room, Kyle? He's not in the room. All right. So yeah, we wrote this Mastering iOS Frameworks. It's really just sort of the, after you've gone to beginner stuff, what are the additional intermediate frameworks that you just want to learn about? So there's a lot of chapters about just sort of random stuff in there. I got to learn a lot about Apple and iOS and the SDK, working on that. So that's who I am. Here's my Twitter handle if anybody cares. And I'll answer questions and stuff if you, afterwards if you got on, hey, what about this and what about that? Happy to answer those questions. All right, so let's talk about storyboards. My first technique, use them. They're not appropriate for everything, obviously. There are cases where, you actually have to do code and UI. But for a great many things that you're doing, storyboards are very appropriate, and they can be a good tool. So why? Why are storyboards a good tool? Well, first off, I'm a lazy bum. I don't like to write code. They help you reduce your code. So if you really use all the things that storyboards offer, you can greatly reduce the amount of code that you have to write. Less code equals less bugs. And my take on code is it's like inventory, right? It ages. The longer you have it, the more expensive it gets to change and get rid of. So write less of it. All right. Also for storyboards, the way I like to do an app, if I get a new app for a client and they give me a design, we've gone through and reviewed the design, everything's cool. I like to just map it out in the storyboard. So I build the entire skeleton of the app in the storyboard immediately. And that helps me figure out what kind of view controllers I need, what kind of model code I'm going to need, and I figure all that out very early. And that's kind of a good start. Then I can get people on the team, I can say, all right, you build this screen, you build that screen, and then I avoid merge conflicts, which we're going to talk about later. So I like using that approach. This morning I had a very interesting conversation with Nick Dalton with the App Storyboard tool. He's presenting out here. And he's got a tool that will take your design from sketch and build your storyboard for you. And you just fill in a few details and bam, there's your storyboard. So it takes my approach to building an app and automates it. So be sure to talk to him about that. Outlets and actions. Okay, so once you've built out your entire app, and you've got all the screens, and then you start putting in all the UI elements and styling things and doing your auto layout and all that kind of stuff, you've got the opportunity to then, set up outlets for things that you need to adjust and set up actions for your functions and when you hit buttons and all that kind of stuff and how you interact with things. So really, my feeling is be very judicious with your outlets, right? You don't need to have an outlet for every single thing on the screen. This may be obvious, but I've seen it before, where people will create an outlet for every single element on the screen. You don't need it. You only need outlets for stuff that you need to manipulate in your code. Navigation and segues. So I like to use segues for navigation. How many people do that? Cool. How many people do them in code? Because I think you can establish a really nice pattern for how you perform your navigation, and this is what Apple encourages you to do, so expect there to be innovation in the future. And when you're looking at your navigation, it really gives you a good idea If you can't do something that your client or you're trying to do in your storyboard with a segue, then you know it's custom, right? And you're going to need to spend some additional time on it. So it's kind of one of those hints for me to be like, ooh, that's going to take more time. That's not going to be an immediately obvious or simple thing to do. So kind of manage expectations either for yourself or for the client when you're looking at your navigation if you can't do it with a segue. All right. And last but not least is maintainability. So Kyle, my co-author on the book there, CEO of MartianCraft, likes to say, when you're writing code, imagine that the next person that sees it is a psychopathic killer, and they know where you live. So, right? So make your code clean and easy to read and easy to deal with. The thing that I hate the most is when I get an app that's all done in code or all like every screen is in a nib, and somebody's like, I just need you to make this super easy one-line change. It'll probably take you 5 minutes on such and such a screen. And it takes me 3 hours to find the screen in the code because I can't get to it, right? So that's why I like storyboards so much, is I can take a storyboard, I can look at it, I can figure out where things are. I can go to that scene, find my scene, find my code, look it up, and there I can make my change. So that's why I like storyboards. All right, technique number 2, use segues. Why? So segues, first off, there's like the show segues, there's relationship segues, for your root view controller, and a navigation controller, or tab bar controllers. There's the embed controller, so if you're using child view controllers, you can do that with a segue. How many people have done that before? Cool. If you're doing child view controllers in code, I really strongly encourage you to look at this approach. It's very much easier. How many people have used an unwind segue? Not very many. Cool. And last of all, manual segues. People use those? You folks as well? Cool. All right. So let's talk about some basics with segues. The first one is, if you're going to do some validations to go from one screen to the next, you can use that should perform segue method on any UI view controller. On your validation, then you can say yes or no, and then you can perform some additional actions if you need to. If your validations are async, for example, you're going to throw up a "Are you sure?" alert or something like that, or you need to do something else that's not completely synchronous in a method. What I suggest is just use a custom method for your action, right, from your button or whatever is moving you to the next screen, and then do a perform segue with an identifier. And that's just a manual segue, right? So then you can perform your validation. You can answer. The user can answer the yes or no alert. And if they say yes, then you can use your manual segue that you've set up. And last but not least, use prepare segue to set up your destination controller. So this is where you do your dependency injection, right? But be advised, there is no direct UI setup. If you try to hit your UI elements in your destination controller, they're not there yet. So just pass along some data. What I like to do is typically just pass along the model object or the array of model objects that I'm doing. And if I'm doing core data, I'll pass along oh gosh, brain just stopped. I'll pass along the context or that sort of thing. So that's where you do your dependency injection. All right, so technique number 2.1 is unwind segue. I'm going to demonstrate this because a lot of places where I've talked about this, people are just completely unaware of what an unwind segue is and why you might want to use one. So just a little refresher here. An unwind segue provides a way to go back without having to set up like a delegate or having to do some weird math in your navigation controller, right? If you're like, well, I think it's 3 screens back if I've done it this way, and then I got to check and make sure it's the right type and all that kind of stuff. Has anybody ever seen code like that? Yeah? Do you hate code like that? Yes? All right. So the unwind segue is actually really powerful. It can navigate through navigation controllers and modal controllers and nests thereof. So we're gonna take a look at kind of a non-trivial example to see how it works. And then to refresh, to implement an unwind segue, all you need to do is in your view controller that you want to go back to, add a method. And it doesn't have to be unwind, but I like to call it that just for convention. So you create a method with this signature that's like the unwind method name. And then you just need to have one parameter, and that's a UI storyboard segue. So you just put that method in the view controller that you want to go back to from wherever you're going to go back from. It doesn't even have to have any code in it. It just has to exist there. Then, in the view controller that you've navigated to and you want to be able to go back, you just have a control. That can be a button. It can be anything else that would respond to an interaction. You just control drag from that to the exit icon. We're going to take a look at that. And then you select that unwind method. And it'll tell you, because it knows what unwind methods are available. So it'll be able to tell what are the options to be able to get back. So let's take a look at this. All right, we're able to see that. I'm kind of wishing I'd put some backgrounds on this, some background colors. So let's say, for example, here I've got a main screen, and then I'm showing like a login controller locally above it, just for argument's sake. Or actually, this is like a landing screen that says, gives me the choice to either log in or create a new account, right? So I can go from there, I can go to my login screen, or I can go to my create new account flow. And let's say that's got a navigation controller, and I'm asking some information, and I'm going to go through this. And at any point in here, in this new account setup, I want to be able to go back to my previous screen, or I want to just be like, I don't want to create a new account anymore. I want to cancel and go back to that starting screen, right? So this is a perfect use case for the unwind segue, because if I weren't using the unwind segue, I'd have to pass a delegate through there and have to go back, or I'd have to do some wacky calculation and say, who's my presenting controller and how far am I in the navigation controller and all that kind of stuff, pop the root and all that back. I've got each of these buttons wired up so that you can see that's just calling my unwind action. And I'll show you in here how you set that up. Why is that not working? Well, run that. I zoomed in, that's why. Ah. Oh man, that's hard to do that way. I should probably mirror, huh? Hold on just a moment. Oh, I see. I'm zoomed in, and this is one of the things that drives me bananas about Storyboard, is when you're zoomed in, or zoomed out, it doesn't function the same way. They changed that in it. Nice. That's going to help a lot. As you notice, I'm behind the times. All right, so the way you do this, again, is you just take your control, click, and drag, and that little icon there that some people are like, what's that for? That will now show you what choices you have. And in this example, I just have like an unwind back to login. If it's a successful login, or an unwind with a cancel, or new account successful, new account cancel. That way I could customize whatever I wanted to do by the time I go back. All right, so that's just a quick look at an unwind controller. Yeah.
Where are you putting that code?
So that code is in the screen that I want to go back to. So the UI, the view controller that I want to go back to. Let me show you that real quick. I zoomed way out. So in this case, I want to go back to this screen. Okay? And in there, let me see if I can. Yeah, so there you can see all I have to do is do a declaration. In this case, I did a little bit more code to tell me whether I was logged in or not, right? To do the right thing.
So every controller that you want to align to has this action, and you exit all of them that have it.
Yeah, all of them that you can get to through your current navigation structure. We do that. All right. All right, next up, learn auto layout. Apple's been telling us this for years. It sucked for a long time. It's a lot better. But learn it, really. So it is absolutely worth your time to get good at auto layout in Storyboards. Some ways you can do this, and kind of my rule is, if I start getting too many constraints, I'll get myself confused, right? And then I start going in a circle of debugging and trying to figure out what's going on. just delete them. Start over. So what I always try to do is just have the fewest constraints I possibly can without being too zen about it, right? Or too Nordic. Because that frequently you'll get the right answer if you go that way. If you're trying to over-constrain, you'll get yourself confused or in circles, or you'll get conflicts that you'll see in your errors. But when in doubt, just delete stuff. Understand where you need constraints and where you don't. So be sure to understand intrinsic content size. If you don't know what it means, go look it up and research it. That's very helpful. And then constraint priorities can sometimes get you out of pickles or situations that are kind of tricky. Last but not least, get the mindset of animating the constraints, not the frames. So if I see any frame code, I'll rip it out. All right, so let's take a quick example. Let's take a look at doing some auto layout stuff here. So I have a client recently